Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is a companion video. What are companion videos? Well, I'm awfully glad that you asked. See, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday, we take the second half of the show to take your live comments and questions. However, a lot of the times, most of the time, we don't have enough time to get around to all the live comments and questions that get sent in. But I want to make sure we don't leave you waiting too awful long to get those questions answered. So what I do is I gather up a bunch of the unused ones and we talk about them and address them here on companion videos. So let's not waste any time, shall we? And let's jump right into it. And we're going to start getting caught up here with Mahir Hawk, who writes, John, I have not felt this obsessed with details in a show since peak Game of Thrones. I'm assuming we're talking about WandaVision. So much to unpack here, and my little heart wants more. Imagine Stephen King's Misery, great movie, by the way, won some Academy Awards. But I'm Annie, and Feige and Schaefer are Paul. The hex reminds me of witches' hexes, and that's on purpose. I think that's kind of part of what they're going for there, using that terminology. But it's true, WandaVision has done a terrific job of not just being this charming, really different and unique, sitcom thing. They've turned it into a obsession kind of show that we cannot help but keep talking about it. And you're not alone on that, Mahir. You are not alone. All right, next up, we got young Aunt Beru is hot. She was, writes, hey, John. What's your most underrated comedy? For me, it's Tropic Thunder. The cast is phenomenal. The movie is hilarious. Even the DVD commentary is hilarious. And in my opinion, Robert Downey Jr. was more on fire here than any other movie he's been in. Well, I don't know if he was as good in this movie as, say, he was in, Chaplin, which he got an Academy Award nomination for or something like that. But listen, I wouldn't call Tropic Thunder underrated. Everybody I know who's seen it loves it. I mean, I don't know that you can call it underrated, and it's not really even underappreciated because I don't know a lot of people who haven't seen it. So it's not a question about whether it's great. You're saying you think it's underrated. I don't think it's underrated at all. Almost everybody's seen it, and I don't know anybody that didn't like it. I mean, I'm sure there are some people out there that didn't like it, but I don't personally know anybody that didn't like it, so I can't call it underrated. It's great. The most underrated movie to me is my almost tied for favorite comedy of all time. And I say almost tied because I do have it just slightly in second place. Let me see if I can find an image here for it. Yeah, I'll often say that it's like number one and number 1A is what I will call these things. Let me see if I can find a bigger picture for this. Because my number one favorite of all time is absolutely 40-Year-Old Virgin. 40-Year-Old Virgin is my number one favorite comedy of all time. To this day, it still is. But very, very close. Like my number 1B favorite comedy of all time is one that I think 90% of you still have not seen. And other than me talking about it, I never hear people talking about it. And that is, let's see if I can pull it up here. That is the amazing Noises Off. Noises Off with Christopher Reeve, John Ritter, Carol Burnett, Michael Caine, on and on and on. This is almost, if it wasn't for 40-Year-Old Virgin, I would say this is my favorite comedy of all time. It is basically, it's this stage company, and almost the entire movie takes place in the theater as they're doing rehearsals, getting ready for opening night of this show called Noises Off. And it is, again, other than 40-Year-Old Virgin is my favorite comedy of all time, I call it underrated because no one's watched it. So maybe that's more underappreciated than underrated. But yeah, if you're going to ask me what I think the most underrated comedy of all time is, it's Noises Off. All right. Thanks for that. Gregor, the Goated Geek writes, first time tipper, long time watcher. Thank you so much, Gregor, for being around and for supporting the show. Appreciate that, man. Hope all is good with you and yours. It is. Thank you. I think Wanda's personality is broken. One side of her is doing her best to make Wanda happy. She speaks with the Sokovian accent. The other, happy Wanda, is not fully aware of it. See, I don't get that at all. I don't pick up on that at all. Because remember, her accent is changing with every new decade show she's in, right? Like you go back to the 50 show. Well, gosh, honey, what are we going to have for dinner? She talks like they talked in 60 sitcoms. They move, or in 50 sitcoms, they move to the 60s. They talk like she talks like they do in 60 sitcoms. Then she changes the way she talks in the 70s. Then she changes the way she talked in the 80s. And then when she steps out of the fantasy, she talks in her normal voice. So yeah, you're not the only one, Gregor. I've heard from a couple of people who are kind of wondering if there's multiple Wandas. But again, I don't pick up on that at all. I think there is one Wanda just because she's changing the way she speaks, but that's not inconvenient or inconsistent with the fact that she's changing the way she speaks every single episode to fit the context that she's in. And then when she's herself, she talks like herself. So that's how I kind of get it. But listen, again, like I said, Gregor, you're not the first one to bring it up. So let's keep our eyes on it. Maybe there's something to it. I don't think there is, but maybe there is. Let's keep our eyes on it. All right, next up. Justin Push Play writes, if you listen to the Disney Plus audio description, it says Pietro from the X-Men films. I don't think it's up in the air more. That means nothing. All that is a description. That is just a description. It doesn't actually mean anything because like, here's the thing. Do you really think Kevin Feige is going to do a massive confirmation reveal in a closed caption when he's not doing it directly on, right there on the screen? I don't think so. So to me, that was really, because I noticed that too, but it's nothing. It really is just a descriptor. Now that, just because I think that's just a descriptor, that doesn't mean it can't also be true. It could. But I'm saying the closed caption, that means absolutely nothing. It doesn't prove anything one way or the other. It's just a descriptor. So it would be saying the things that we would be seeing with our eyes. And that's what we saw. But whether or not that's anything to confirm anything, not in the least. Not in the least. Doesn't mean it can't be true later on, but that was in no way, shape, or form confirmation. That was just description. All right, next up. Sam Fisher writes, you're right. I don't think Wanda is a villain, or at least the main villain, because the whole It's All Wanda is a classic first act turning point, and is way too early in the story. I think she started as a victim and became an abuser because victims can become abusers. I don't go that far. See, I thought it was all Wanda until in episode 4, the end of the episode with, "It's all Wanda," which sounds like it's confirming my theory. But them confirming my theory so early in the show, like at not even the halfway point in episode 4, that's what made me, like, it was them confirming my theory that made me stop believing my theory. Because episodes 1, 2, 3, I'm all like, yep, Wanda's doing all of this. And then when they said, Wanda's doing all of this, I'm like, wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense that you're revealing that this early. I no longer believe it's all Wanda. Now, I still think it's mostly Wanda. But there is clearly another player involved. Whether that player is a character or a person or an entity, whatever, I do think now there is another player involved. Whether it's the essence of the Mind Stone that's trying to get Wanda to give it corporeal form again, whether it's a Mephisto, which I still don't think it is, but a lot of people think it is, and it could be, whether it's the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever, whoever. There's clearly, to me, another player. We're just going to have to find out who it is. All right, Leon Sunwolf writes, one of two. Hi, John. Love your show. Thank you so much, Leon. I have an observation which transforms in a theory. The kids are creeping me out. The kids are creeping me more and more, and I'm starting to think that they are, in fact, the antagonist because I think they are in control when Wanda is not. Since she's been pregnant, there's been incidents. The rain outside, the Sycyonia, I'm not quite sure what that is, the butterflies, then they grow themselves, and lastly, they ask her to raise the dead. Plus, she told them she has a brother far away, and a Quicksilver from another universe shows up. See, here's the problem, though. This show starts before she's pregnant. Now, listen, I'm always saying, don't pay too much attention to what happens in the comics because the comics are the comics. What happens on screen in the MCU is the MCU. They're two different things. Just because something happens in the comics does not mean that's what they're doing in the show or in the movie, as the case may be. But it is interesting to keep in mind that, in like, what was it called? The Avengers Disassembled and in House of M. She has twins, but they're not real. They're not real. And her losing these fictional children is just another thing that makes her kind of lose it, without going into brutal detail. So I still don't think the children are real. I think they're real inside the bubble, as real gets, but I still don't think they're actually what we as an audience would consider real. And not to mention, again, this show started before she became pregnant, and therefore I don't think we can say they're the ones behind it. It'd be interesting, though. It would be an interesting spin there, Leon, if they do go that direction. Right now, I'm thinking not, though, because number one, I don't even think they're real. Number two, and I could be wrong about that. And number two, because my theories are changing every episode. Number two, she was in the show before she was pregnant at all. So that's why I would lean away from it. But who knows? They've done crazier things. All right, Gregor writes again. I'm loving the weekly drops. So much discussion, so much speculation. Today there was 500,000 tweets, but even if they stick the landing in the finale, is there a chance people will be disappointed because it doesn't meet personal expectations? Of course there is. Absolutely. Listen, here's one of the great things, and at the same time, one of the bad things about fandom. And this includes all of us. All of us are a part of this. The great thing is, with all the speculation and the theorizing, we get invested and we get involved, and it connects us even more to the property. That's the good side of the coin. The flip side and the bad side of that coin is that sometimes we get so invested in our own theories and our own speculation and what we think they should do. Well, no, the show shouldn't have done that. They should have done this. So I don't like that they didn't do the thing I think they should have done. Let's be honest. We're all guilty of that. We've all done it. Don't pretend like you haven't. We all have. Present company included. We all have. And that's the flip side of the coin, right? We get all this, we get so invested, and we speculate and theorize, and that's great. That's a good thing. But then quite often, not always, but quite often we go to the negative side of that, where we get so invested that if they don't do the theory that we thought was best, then we get turned off saying, no, that was stupid. They didn't do what I thought they should have done. And we see that all the time. So sure, there's definitely going to be some people, no matter how good this thing ends, there are going to be some of us that get pissed off at it because they didn't do the theory we thought they should have done. It's truth. It's just the truth. How many of us? I don't know, but it's going to happen. And then, like I said, we've all been guilty of it. So it's sure to happen, Gregor. It's sure to happen. All right, next up, Sam Fisher writes, if the episode 6 promo you were talking about was posted by Screen Culture, I think that's fan made by them. I'm not quite sure what Screen Culture is. It uses footage we have seen before, and the audio quality changes rapidly during it. I think it's fake. Again, I'm not quite sure which one you're talking about. I'm not quite familiar with what Screen Culture is. I know what Screen Rant is. I know what Screen Crush is. I know what Screen Geeks are. There's 1,000 different outlets that start with the word screen. So many, and nothing wrong with that. There's so many that start with screen, but I'm not quite familiar with that one, Sam. I'll keep an eye open for it, though. Oziant writes, not sure if mentioned already, but did you read or heard of the article talking about Willem Dafoe reportedly on set, reprising the Green Goblin role for Spider-Man 3? Thoughts? Ignore it. If it's real, it'll be on one of the real trades. Like, this is what I say a lot about. Every day, there's 1,000 new rumors come out. 999 of them are false. Like, 1 out of 1,000 is true. And then people go, see, we should listen to the rumors. Except that you're believing 999 false. Look, this is kind of my take on the whole rumor mill stuff. I believe sometimes they're real. But if they are real, then tomorrow or 3 days from now or next week or whatever, then one of the real legitimate trades, news trades, will talk about it. Whether it's Entertainment Weekly or whether it's the Hollywood Reporter or whether it's Variety or whether it's Deadline or whatever. If it's real, one of them will discuss it and talk about it. And if none of them are talking about it, there might be a reason why none of them are talking about it. But yeah, so my kind of litmus test is, if it's real, one of them will talk about it. And then once one of them talk about it, there's a much greater confidence we can have that it's legit. And then we can talk about it. Because if it's real, eventually the real trades will carry it. And if it's not, they never will. They'll never pick up on it. So I like to kind of wait. So my whole thing about the whole Defoe thing is, I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't be true. There's no reason it couldn't be true. So I hear that and I go, okay, I'll take that little bit of information I just heard and I'm going to put it away. I'll put it up on a shelf that I can easily go back to if I hear one of the legitimate news sites start to carry it. Then I can go, oh, okay, yeah, I remember we did hear about that. All right, now let's talk about it. So that's kind of my attitude on that, Ozian. All right, next up. Noel Fornols writes, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name there, Noel. I'm the worst in the world at names. Hey, John. Congrats on the new house. Thank you very much. We're enjoying it very much so far. I think when Wanda is emotionally overwhelmed, she's not in control of herself. Maybe they're hinting on a dual personality disorder. She claims ownership of Westview, then she's enraged, but not when she's sad, etc. Well, I mean, I don't know who did it. I think somebody, probably some prominent outlet, came up with the theory that there's two Wandas, because I've been hearing a bunch of that theory the last 24 hours or so. Again, everything I see in the show points to that not being true. It all points to there being one Wanda. Now, I think it's true of most of us that we're not really in control of ourselves when we're emotionally overwhelmed. Isn't that true of all of us? So I think that's probably true of Wanda as well. But yeah, I don't think we're dealing with a split personality, although they could. We've seen that plot device used in other movies and TV shows, and it can be done effectively. But I don't think that's what's going on. I think this really is more in tune, although once again, it's not a direct thing. It can go different, but I think this is a little bit more in tune with House of M Wanda. I think she's just losing it. All the grief and all the tragedy is just making her losing it, and she's a little bit of unbalanced right now, Noel. At least that's what I think. But again, you're not the first person to suggest like multiple personality Wanda or multiple Wandas. Let's see if that actually goes anywhere. All right, next up. RJ writes, wouldn't the obvious detail that decides if that's actually a version of Quicksilver would be if he shows any hint of his speed powers? I don't think Wanda would manifest a replication of his power into a random person. Well, listen, I don't think that this imposter, I don't think this Evan Peters Quicksilver was manifested by Wanda. I completely believe Wanda. Now, granted, it comes out of a scene where Wanda was just bold-faced lying to Vision's face. I don't know what you're talking about, Vision. She was just bold-faced lying. But when she says, I don't even remember how this started. And when the doorbell rings and she says, I didn't do that, I believe her. I know she was just lying a second ago, but I actually believe her when she said, I didn't do the doorbell ring. And I think she was telling the truth. And I think when she opened that door, and there was a dude there claiming to be her brother, I don't think she did that. So I think there's something else. Now listen, there's no reason to believe that in this entire fantasy world that makes everybody black and white and living in the era of the 50s and 60s can't make it that one of these fictional characters doesn't, exhibit super speed. So I think if he doesn't exhibit super speed, that doesn't mean it's not the actual Quicksilver. If he does exhibit super speed, I don't think that means it is the actual Quicksilver. I mean, in this fairy tale world, they're living in this bubble where everybody can be turned black and white and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't think whether or not one of those characters exhibits a certain power means they are or are not that character. So that's kind of my take on that right now, RJ, but we'll see. All right, Gregor, the Goatee Geek writes, can I just say how good was Asif Ali, Norm, in this episode? His transition from terrified back to normal has to be the first entry in his portfolio. Listen, I'll tell you what, it was cool. It was a job well done when Vision touches his head and he's like, oh my God, what day is it? How long has it been? My sister, she's looking after my dad. He's sick and blah, blah, blah. That was good. I mean, that was fine. Nothing wrong with it. It was fine. But it was the instant transition back to being in the fantasy. When Vision put him back in the fantasy, that instant transition, tell me, If I send one of these emails, where do I put the stamp? I mean, that was actually jarring. It was so good. That was a really good transition. I thought that was really well done. All right, next up. K Moon writes, one of two. Hi, John. I have a medical experience, and Monica's blank brain scan is actually even cooler than you think. Monica looked like she was getting a chest x-ray, CXR, which would be a common medical practice. Her CXR was blown out, white and blank. This means she was probably emitting x-rays / radiation / energy, which would cause the CXR to look completely white. That's interesting. So it seems likely this is the source of her upcoming powers. I love this attention to detail in the show. Well, I'll tell you what, K-Moon. I'll tell you what. I love what you're saying here because that makes sense on a lot of levels. Listen, the showrunner and the creator of WandaVision just did this interview where she was talking about, number one, Fantastic Four is not involved, but number two, that the whole CMBRs, that whole radiation thing, she specifically researched that to talk about how the signals of a TV show would be carried and all that kind of stuff. And she did personal research into the science of that, and then incorporated that into the show. That would be so consistent with what you're suggesting. Now, let's say that Monica came out of the fantasy sphere and she's now emitting some kind of her own radiation, right? That she's doing that. That could mean a couple of different things. Number one, it could mean that she is still carrying residual energy that Wanda blasted her with or cocooned her with to protect her as she was throwing her out of her world. And I think maybe some of that residual energy they discover might become the key to them stopping Wanda. The other option is maybe this is how she becomes, Photon or Spectrum or whichever one of her many, many superhero names that Monica Rambeau eventually takes on. Here's the thing. I don't see how Wanda casting a spell on somebody suddenly gives them superpowers. I mean, that's nothing they've ever shown with Wanda in the MCU so far, like nothing even remotely close to that. So I don't know about that. And I still kind of think that her getting her powers will be something that happens probably in Captain Marvel 2, but I don't know that either. But your theory is sound. Either way that they go with that, your theory is sound. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, K-Moon. I think that would make a lot of sense. And like I said, would be completely consistent with what the showrunner and creator of the show kind of revealed before about her researching that science. That sounds exactly like something she would do. I'm going to keep my eye open for that from now on. Excellent, excellent work, K-Moon. Well done. All right. Next up, we got Christina B. who writes, is Hayward actually the big bad or worse? Hayward, of course, the director of S.W.O.R.D. Just a government jackass a la General Ross. Why didn't Wanda just take control of Vision and blink his doubts out of his head like she had in the past? Is she losing control of him? I don't think she's losing control of him. Well, first of all, about Hayward, I think the jury is still out on that. A lot of people think he's one of the people behind this whole thing, that maybe he's the big bad. But my thing is, the reason I'm not bought into that theory yet is because when you look at everything he was saying, even when he was being a dick, everything he was saying was also rational. Like every point he brought up was the truth. He never lied. Everything he brought up about Wanda maybe being bad and a bad person. She got radicalized by Hydra. She had all these experiments done on her. She did come out fighting against the Avengers. The whole Sokovia Accords was because of things that happened with her, whether it was intentional or not. Now she's holding a whole town full of the thousands of people hostage. But like everything he said it in a very dick way. But everything he said was the truth. It wasn't irrational for somebody to look at the evidence in front of them and think the way he was. So I am not ready yet to just throw in with the theory of he must be the big bad guy behind all this. I think there's still a chance he was just being a dick. But again, I'm not willing to get behind either one of those things. Again, I just thought I don't think there was anything definitive in what we've seen because everything he was saying was kind of rational. Anyway, that's just that. Thanks, Christina. Okay, Elizabeth J. writes, since Wanda recreated Vision through magic, so can he do magic now with the whole waking up Norm? No, I think that was always kind of, remember, his power is the Mind Stone, right? So he's able to do a lot of that stuff. So I don't think that was inconsistent. I think there's a science explanation for that. So no, I don't think Vision is suddenly magical. I don't think Vision is suddenly magical. I think this version of Vision, because I think the true Vision is dead. The true real Vision is dead. This is some kind of new monstrosity. This is kind of a Frankenstein's monster that Wanda took the old scrap pieces that was scattered all over that sword lab and then recreated a new version of Vision. But it's not actually Vision, which is why he says he has no memory of anything before Westview. But I think she's done it that in this fantasy world, he can exhibit the powers that he had. I think. But I don't know. I mean, we'll find out more after episode 6. Good question, though, Elizabeth. All right, next up. Mac Ray writes, John, watched one of your videos for the first time last week for WandaVision. Absolutely loved it. Well, thank you so much. Good to have you here. Keep up all that you and Ann are doing. Curious to hear your thoughts on the significance, if there is any, of there being an animal in each episode. Well, what do we got? We had the stork. We had a lobster in episode 1. Is that the animal we're talking about in episode 1? We had the stork. We had the dog. What are the other animals? I can't remember. I'll go out on a limb and say this. Other than the stork, I don't think there's been an animal thing that what I would say resembles something of significance. You know what I mean? So, but then again, Mac, I got to say, I hadn't even really noticed that each episode featured thing. I can't even think about what the animal representation was in episode 4 or episode 2, but be that as it may, I can't recall. So I'm going to guess no, there isn't any significance there. But now that you've put it on my radar, it's something I'm going to wonder about. So I don't know, man. We'll see. Thanks for bringing that up, Mac, and it's good to have you here. All right, next up. Gregor writes, I really want Wiccan and Speed to be real. Add in Kate Bishop from Hawkeye and young Skrull from maybe the Secret Wars series will give me the Young Avengers. Plus, you could have Old Man Cap as a mentor to the team. I don't really have I'm not going to lie to you. I don't have a lot of interest in that. But then again, like I don't have a lot of interest in a Hawkeye series to begin with, even though I love Hawkeye in the MCU. I'm not interested in a Hawkeye standalone. Kind of the same way that I'm not interested in a Black Widow standalone movie. I mean, it's MCU. I'm going to go see it. I'm going to watch it for sure. And maybe it'll be great, but I love Black Widow in the MCU. I just don't know that I'm all that interested in standalone stuff. I definitely don't have a lot of interest in a Bishop, in Kate Bishop and Young Avengers and things like that. And I have a feeling, much like House of M, I don't think these kids are getting out of this. And Avengers disassembled. I don't think you're going to see them get out of this. I don't think these kids are going to be in existence by the time WandaVision's done. I don't know that. Maybe they do. Maybe they age up to 20 here pretty soon, but I'm thinking they are not long for this world, Gregor. We'll find out. All right, next up. Leon writes, I know who Wanda is. It's Kevin Feige. This seems like a giant metaphor to me. Kevin's had control of the multiverse and creating his own reality, and I love it. Thanks, John. Love the show. Well, I don't know that that's what Kevin Feige has in mind making Wanda, saying, let's make Wanda like me, all powerful. Although maybe I could see Kevin saying that. Yeah, I don't see that, but maybe, listen, from a fan point of view, Leon, it's not that much of a stretch. He is kind of controlling the multiverse. You're absolutely right about that. So maybe it's not much of a stretch for us from a fan point of view. Thanks for sharing that, man. All right, next up. Tony Rodriguez writes, okay, So what if people that came back from the snap came back with dormant powers and getting thrown through the walls activated her powers that she still don't realize she has, hence messing up her scans, trauma or emotions, bringing it on instead of puberty? Again, then that would suggest that that's the whole way they're going to introduce the X-Men. And I still have problems with that I've explained many, many times before. I still think, look, Kay just brought up a great stuff about what would cause X-rays and scans to show that. My first gut is to think that that's residual energy from what Wanda did to her. And that they're going to discover that residual energy and figure out, they're going to science that residual energy and figure out a way to stop Wanda for now. Or it could be that Wanda did something to strike her power. I still don't think it has anything to do with mutation. I still don't think it has anything to do with X-Men, but you never know, Tony. I mean, it could absolutely be it. Let's see what happens in episode 6 and 7. All right, next up. Brendan Olvnik writes, I'm so excited to see what's up with Agnes. So many little clues that she is different from other people in Westview. For example, are you here to help us? Saying she would take us from the top, or saying, should we take it from the top in the beginning of episode 5 as if she knows she's acting. Listen, one thing that I believe is absolutely clear about Agnes, and it's the only thing that I think is clear about Agnes, is that she is different from everybody else in Westview. I think there was a reason that hers was the one dossier on the wall that they didn't have her real identity. The way she's functioning in here, the way she looked at Herb terrified when she thought Herb was going to reveal the secret to Vision. The way she was clearly a little scared of Wanda, saying, should we just take it from the top? Is that what you'd like to do, Miss Wanda, ma'am? You know, there's just too much there to show there's something very distinct about her from everybody else. I don't know, and I'm not convinced that means she's one of the bad guys behind the scenes. See, here's the problem with this. The main reason I don't think Agnes is one of the bad guys, or certainly not the bad guy, is she's clearly afraid of Wanda, right? Like, once again, we go back to episode 4, or was it episode 3? Well, one of the two. When Vision comes out and talks to Herb, and Agnes is there, and Herb was like, he was about to tell Vision, because and he was about to tell Vision, and Agnes turns to him. Now, if she was the bad guy, or one of the bad guys, she would turn and look at Herb like, don't you dare, like you're dead if you say anything. But what was the look on her face? It was terror. It was fear. Go back and watch it again. She turns to Herb. It's like she's begging him with everything in her, like her life depends on it, begging him not to say what he was about to say. And so it's that leads me to believe that while she may be different, I don't think she's the bad guy. But I don't know that for sure. It's just my guess. We'll see where things go. But she's definitely separate and different from everybody else in Westview. All right, next up. Christina B. writes, when the town is under, are they feeling Wanda's pain and grief and or their own sadness? Monica and Norm aren't in happy places in the outside world. Or is it a collective grief? 3 weeks after the blip, a lot of people are processing what happened. I don't know, but I think you just kind of really well laid it out. Like, all Monica really said was she felt a lot of grief. But then she saw flashes of her own grief, the memorial picture of her mother, Maria, on the wall. And she caught a glimpse of Wanda's grief, being in pain, the tear coming down Wanda's eyes. She caught a glimpse of both when thinking about feeling grief. So right now, I kind of think from that one little example, it seems like it's a mixture of the two, Christina. It seems like she is experiencing her own grief that is amplified and heightened, and she's experiencing Wanda's grief at the same time. So I don't think it's one or the other. I think this is a both and situation. I love the way you just laid that out and described that. Well done. All right. Jordan writes, hey, John. There's a new rumor going around about Willem Dafoe on the set of Spider-Man 3. True or false? Again, for me, false until we hear it from one of the legitimate trades. Once we hear it in one of the legitimate trades, and we'll go, okay, so then clearly it's real. Until then, I'm just going to kind of ignore it. All right, Tony Rodriguez writes, Maybe Monica is texting Reed Richards. No, she's not. Is texting Reed Richards pre-going into space, getting his powers. Not saying we are getting a Fantastic Four movie or show soon, but sowing the seeds for later, showing the Fantastic Four characters are out there as just regular humans, and he is already a scientist. No, I don't think so. I don't think there's any reason to believe that. First of all, the showrunner already said there's no connection between this show and Fantastic Four. And the type of scientist, engineer she mentioned is not traditionally what Reed Richards is known as, if I'm remembering correctly. So no, but that's what we do, right, Tony? Whenever we hear, wait a minute, somebody just ordered pizza? In one of the Spider-Man comics, Peter Parker was making some of his money by delivering pizza. I think there's a connection to Spider-Man. Like we all do that. We all look for anything. Now look, but I will say this. The way Monica exclaimed, hey, I know an engineer who might do this, that was clearly whoever she was talking about, I think is going to come into the show in the final 4 episodes. I think whoever she was talking about is going to become somebody in there. I mean, maybe it's Hank Pym. Or maybe it's somebody else. I mean, I don't know, but I don't think it's Reed Richards. I don't think they're going to go there at this point. So no, I personally don't think it's Reed Richards, but it's completely on the table. It is on the table. I just don't think that's what it is, but we'll find out. All right. David King writes, do you think Wanda's bubble will make Monica sick? Maybe cancer like her mother. Ooh, and Captain Marvel to save her and redeem herself for leaving Maria to die will help Monica receive her powers. I mean, I don't think that's that's very specific. I don't think that's what they're doing, but that's kind of a nice theory. I like that. I mean, because remember, clearly something happened that made Monica sour on Captain Marvel. Because they were like family. And whether it's because maybe she blames her mother's death on her, maybe she blames or is angry at Captain Marvel for not being there while her mother was going through something horrible. Maybe she's mad at Captain Marvel for not being there when she did lose her mother and not even coming to check in. Maybe it's been 3 weeks since she's been back and like you haven't even come to say hello, to pay your respects, to do whatever. I mean, I don't know. But clearly something has soured there. So I don't know if this will play something to do like a further part in that moving on, or whether that was just a one-time drop to set up another movie another time. We'll wait and see. All right. Thanks for bringing that up, David. Next up, we've got Kathy K writes, did anyone notice the reference to Family Ties with the sit Sparky sit, good dog woof? Every Family Ties episode ended with sit boo boo sit or sit ubu sit. I love the clever reference to the sitcom. I don't know if that was a reference because it wasn't just found. There's a lot of sitcoms that I think ended with that. I think that was a production company, and I think there were many shows that ended with that. Kind of like the do. Like there's a lot of shows in that era that ended with a little main production company behind it tagline. And I think that was a fairly common one. I don't think them having a dog and saying sit Sparky sit was necessarily a nod to that. Maybe it was. I don't know. Maybe it could be. Maybe they thought, it would be fun. Let's throw this in there as a Family Ties thing. I don't know, maybe. But remember, it was associated with a lot of other shows too. But it would be kind of cool to find out if that's what the inspiration behind it was. Okay. Next up, Alex B writes, hey, John. At the end of episode 5, I noticed that Wanda tells Vision something, and I quote, I don't know how it happens That's not quite a direct quote. I don't know how this started in the first place. I think it was how she said. I don't think it's how this started in the first place. What is your thoughts on this? Love the show all the way from Quebec and keep on the filthy. I love Quebec. I've visited Quebec many times. I've been to Quebec Major. I've been to Montreal. I've been all around the thing. I love the province. It's so beautiful. Anyway. Wish you guys had more English signs up though. Anyway. Ooh, that's Campea starting a big political controversy with the Quebecois. I don't know what that means yet. I don't know if that's just her being flustered and saying, I don't even know how I got here. How to solve. I mean, we've seen lots of movies and TV shows where like the villain just got carried away and got worse and worse and worse, and see the villain go, I don't even know how this started. This was never supposed to happen. I didn't mean for this to happen. All this kind of stuff. Maybe that was that. Maybe that's implying Like I said, I now believe that Wanda isn't totally in control of everything. I think she's in control of a lot of it. I think she's making a lot of bad decisions. But I think it's fairly clear at this point that there is another player involved. So whether it was another player that kind of got things started and Wanda just bought into it and accepted it and embraced it and made it worse, or whether she's just talking about, like, I don't even know how this started. Like, she never meant for it to get to this point. I'm not sure yet, but we do know that there's another player involved here, and we'll see if that's connected to that statement or not. We'll find out soon. All right. Thanks for that, Alex, and enjoy Quebec. All right. Next up, by the way, make beliefs forever. James writes, if MCU eventually starts X-Men, do you think Feige should reconstruct Magneto's origin? Because Holocaust survivor would make him really old at this point, even if he was just a toddler back when the whole arc and character won't make sense. Well, James, I've talked about that for a couple of years now. Yeah. The Magneto surviving the Holocaust thing, that's no longer on the table. It's got to be something else. Here's the key, though. It doesn't have to be surviving a concentration camp. All it needs to be is some type of major event that made Magneto see the worst in humanity. Like the concentration camps. Like the Holocaust. Whether that's one of the atrocities that happens in Africa, like Rwanda. I mean, hello. That you want to talk about an event that would show to a young mutant the worst in humanity? How about that? A lot of the Middle Eastern Eastern conflicts, Eastern Europe conflicts. I didn't mean Middle. I mean Eastern Europe conflicts. Look at some of the garbage that's happened there. I mean, there is a lot of stuff that you could go to because, again, we're too far gone. We're too far removed now from the Holocaust to have Magneto be a believable character now. So yes, they do have to adapt it. All they got to do is find a tragic, terrible example of humanity and say that is what a young Eric saw as a young child or as a young boy or as a young man, depending on where you want to age him. Young child, young boy, young man. To witness the worst, and with that totally forever ingrained in him that humans are awful. Humans are terrible. And there's a lot of different events that you could pick from in recent human history. But yes, I don't think you can do the Holocaust anymore. All right, next up. Sam Fisher writes, potential spoiler regarding the Monica Carol beef. If your idea that Carol was on Earth, but then never came to console or visit Monica, I think it could also be that Carol wasn't there when Maria was going through treatment again, so Maria died alone. I mean, that's possible too. I mean, if Monica found out in the last 3 weeks since she's been back from the snap, that after she disappeared, Captain Marvel came to Earth not long after that. Because remember, she got the signal from Agent Fury when the snap happened. And then we saw in the post-credit scene that she shows up. Where's Nick Fury? She shows up. So not long after the events of the snap, when Monica was snapped away, Captain Marvel came to Earth. Maybe Monica found out that she never went to go see Maria. And then since Monica wasn't there for Maria in her last days, that meant she died alone because Captain Marvel wasn't there for her either, even though Captain Marvel came back to Earth. Maybe Captain Marvel was so obsessed with trying to find Thanos, she didn't even think to go and check in on her friend. And that pissed Monica off. I don't know. It's a theory. It could be that. It could be something radically different. But it would be interesting if it was something very deeply personal like that. Very deeply personal. We'll find out. All right. Let's see. Thanks for that, Sam. Next up, Tony Rodriguez writes, isn't it funny that Aaron Taylor Thomas and Evan Peters was both in Kick-Ass? You mean Aaron Taylor Johnson? I think you mean Aaron Taylor Johnson, right? Hold on a second. Let me write this in. Yeah, it's Aaron Taylor Johnson, not Aaron Taylor Thomas. And Evan Peters were both in Kick-Ass and now both playing Quicksilver. Well, we talked about that years ago. Like when Ultron was coming out, and then X-Men Days of Future Past was coming out. We talked about that. The two guys from Kick-Ass, now they're both playing Quicksilver. How that phone call go? Hey, Evan, I got the Quicksilver role in X-Men. Oh, yeah, Aaron, I got the Quicksilver role in Avengers. Yeah, but you die, LOL. Yeah, that would have been a fun conversation. But it's funny then. I remember after we found out that the second one also got one of the Quicksilver roles, going back and watching Kick-Ass again and seeing the two of them on screen, it's like they both become Quicksilver. It's kind of funny. Small world there, Tony. All right, next up, we've got Lizardton writes, could the bubble be rejecting Wanda's magic? Almost like it's getting too powerful for her to handle. The twins giving her a hard time aging, and Pietro, Evan Peters appearing. I mean, listen, there are a lot of different potential things here. I mean, I think the bubble is her construct, right? But I don't know, maybe her magic doesn't work on the twins because the twins ain't real. The twins aren't even real, so her magic, her hex can't work on them. I don't know that. I'm just speculating here. Again, that we've heard that theory the last couple of days that the actual power behind this is actually the Mind Stone itself. The essence of the Mind Stone still endures, even though the physical Mind Stone was destroyed. The essence of it endures, and it's trying to take corporeal form again. It's trying to get Wanda to bring it back into reality. And it's trying to deceive her into doing it. I don't know, maybe that. I'm not really sure. There's a lot of different possible things there. But Lizardtron, that's the billion-dollar question right now, right? That's the thing we're all keeping our eyes on. What is driving this? And I think we're going to find out soon. All right, next up. Strauss House writes, my husband believes that Nightmare has something to do with this. Any thoughts? I mean, it's again, look, when you're talking about if there's another semi-popular or semi-well-known MCU character, Nightmare, Agatha Harkness, Mephisto's one that comes up. Some people are even suggesting Galactus is behind it. I don't see how that makes any sense, but there are people out there who think it's Galactus. The big question is, we know there's another player involved. Who is it? I will say this. I haven't seen anything in the show that remotely would make sense or show any kind of a tie-in of Nightmare. We're 6 episodes in now. Like we are more than halfway done the show, right? So I'm starting to lose belief in any singular character. I'm wondering more. That's why I'm buying more and more into this Mind Stone theory. Again, I'm not there yet, and I have some fundamental philosophical problems with them using the Mind Stone because everything has been Infinity Stones for 11 plus years and 20 plus movies in the MCU. Can they really not move on from it? But it is something that fits in my... So I personally don't buy the Nightmare idea. I know some people do, and maybe they'll be proven correct. But for now, I don't buy into that myself. I think Mephisto's more likely than Nightmare, and I don't even buy into the Mephisto theory yet. So who knows, though? After episode 6, I could have a totally different train of thought. Totally different. All right, next up. Sam Fisher writes, if they do cast John Krasinski as Reed Richards / Mr. Fantastic, I need a scene between Mr. Fantastic and Jimmy Woo. I think it would be hilarious, especially because I don't think Jim and Asian Jim share any scenes in The Office, but I might be wrong. Oh, there would be, oh my God. If Reed Richards does end up being John Krasinski, which has been all the talk for almost 2 years now, everybody seems to want John Krasinski and Emily Blunt as Reed Richards and Sue Storm. But regardless on, whether that should happen or not, if they do, I think it would be the very definition of a missed opportunity. If you have both of them there and you don't have some kind of fourth wall breaking little meta joke regarding, The Office or some kind of Asian Jim kind of joke, that would be a massively missed opportunity. I mean, until I saw Always Be My Maybe that Randall Park did with Ali Wong, whenever I think of Randall Park, I just always thought of Asian Jim. I just thought of him as Asian Jim. And then once I saw Always Be My Maybe, that he was kind of like the star of this rom-com, then I kind of think of him in Always Be My Maybe. But Man, I want to see that X-Files shows with him too. But yes, Sam, that would be absolutely a missed opportunity. All right, let's move on now. And next up, we have K. Vin, who writes, I think it's Fox's Quicksilver because Agnes or Mephisto, like Wanda, can't just bring back the dead. So they take a Quicksilver from multiverse to possess like how Lucifer from Supernatural does. Only he may or may not need permission like that of Lucifer. Well, I mean, here's the thing. If, again, we're just talking about the reference material. If you go back to the reference material of like House of M and things like that, yeah, she can make things, she can alter reality. She can do things to alter reality and to create a thing. And by the way, it's not just her. Like, I don't think she's the one who brought him in there. I think this is an imposter. I don't think it's real. But it could be. I mean, look, when we are just talking about theories here from a show, right? So if I say, I think Wanda's in control of everything, like I did in episodes 1, 2, and 3, well, then something can happen in the next episode like it did in 4, when Monica says, it's all Wanda. They made me go, oh, wait a minute. It's clearly not all Wanda if you're confirming this, right? So everything that I say is simply a theory that will either solidify or change as new episodes come out and we evolve. Right now, I just don't think that Evan Peters is the actual Quicksilver from the actual Fox movies. He looks like that. We're supposed to believe that, but I believe it's a total misdirect and it's not real. And as far as what they can and cannot do within this reality, I don't think any solid rules have been laid yet, especially when we don't know what is this other player involved other than Wanda. Because it's clear it's not just Wanda doing it, right? And until we even have a clue as to who really the other player is, it's impossible for us right now to say what can and cannot happen within that bubble. So until we get a clearer picture of that, I'm not willing to say it is definitely this thing or it's definitely not this thing. Just for now, I don't believe that's the actual Pietro from the Fox universe. It looks like him. It's supposed to convince us it's him, but I don't believe it is, and we will find that as the show progresses. All right. Darren Wilton writes, hey, John and Ann. Obviously, Ann's not here. Have you seen that on the audio description for the latest episode of WandaVision that Pedro, probably meant Pietro, is described as Pietro from X-Men movies? Again, means nothing. All that was describing what it was we were seeing. We were seeing the actor. We were seeing the Pietro that we saw in the Fox X-Men movies, but that was just a description of what we were seeing. It does not mean it was actually that, so I don't believe that means anything. Doesn't disqualify it from being so, but I also don't believe it in any way, shape, or form that confirms it being so either. So I don't think that goes either way. All right, thanks for writing that in, Darren. Next up, Ryan Rodriguez writes, I've been listening, pardon me, I've been listening to all the talk about the big cameo in WandaVision all week long. With Evan Peters coming in, it opens the door for Rob's Magneto theory. That was my Magneto theory. Anyway, being right, can we just acknowledge that Feige started as Laura Schuler Donner's assistant on the... Feige was her assistant for the first X-Men movies. It comes full circle for him. I don't know that he can really pass up on that opportunity. Oh, absolutely he can. He absolutely can. Now listen. Inasmuch, this is my own interior contradiction I'm having with myself. And I pointed this out before. I have two minds. I do not believe at all that is the Pietro from the X-Men universe. I do not believe at all that Kevin Feige is going to make his X-Men the X-Men from the Fox universe. I don't believe that at all. I don't know why he would take the characters from a failing franchise, and it was failing. I mean, the X-Men franchise has been very, very successful, but by the time they ended, they were failing. They had gone in a massive nosedive, both financially at the box office and quality-wise, because, they went from something like X-Men Days of Future Past, and then comes X-Men Apocalypse, which took a big nosedive in box office. And then came X-Men Dark Phoenix, which took another massive nosedive in popularity in box office and was terrible. I mean, it wasn't the worst thing ever. The movie had some redeeming qualities that I enjoyed, but overall it was a bad film. X-Men Apocalypse was a bad film. I just don't see any reason why he would do that. But that's one side of my mind, right? The other side of my mind, if you guys remember, we did that video and I brought up a list of potential people this big Luke Skywalker in Mandalorian level cameo could be. And I specifically said Magneto or Professor X. I mean, like Magneto and Charles Xavier. And, then we're reminded again that a little over a year ago, Patrick Stewart confirmed that him and Kevin Feige, because he was asked about, hey, we hear that you and Kevin Feige have met. So Patrick Stewart confirmed, yeah, we met. Talk about Professor Xavier. But you know what? I think Charles's ending in Logan was perfect, so I declined. What if he didn't decline? What if that was just him throwing people off the trailer? Because you know what was happening a little over a year ago? WandaVision was in pre-production a little over a year ago. Just throwing that out there. And all about that same time, that's all happening. And Patrick Stewart says, but I turned it down because my ending in Logan was too perfect. What if he didn't say that? What if he didn't say that? What if that's just throwing everybody off the case? So look, on one hand, I'm like, there's no way he's going to recycle old X-Men. Then on the other hand, I'm thinking, it could be possible that it's Magneto and Charles Xavier. So my own theories are contradicting themselves here, folks. But no, I still don't think that is in any way, shape, or form. I don't think Evan Peters is the guy from the Fox movies. That's just my take on it. Okay, next up, Isaac BB writes, come on, John, be honest with yourself. The only reason that you hate X-Men Apocalypse is because of the scene where they all walk out of seeing Return of the Jedi in theaters, and Jean Grey says the third movie in the trilogy is always the worst one. No, it was a bad movie. And you know me, I'm a big fan of the Fox X-Men movies. Yes, I acknowledge there are bad ones in there, right? Like X-Men Origins Wolverine and X-Men 3 wasn't the best. And but I mean, I love X-Men 1, X-Men 2, X-Men Days of Future Past. I quite enjoy X-Men First Class, Logan, the Deadpool things, although that's not really connected. But I love the X-Men movies. But yeah, Apocalypse was bad. But that was a funny joke. So but it was also a self-aware joke. Because everybody knows X-Men 3 was really bad for them. So them kind of joking and saying, everybody knows the third film's always the worst. That was kind of a little dig at its own franchise, I thought so. That was my kind of take on that. All right, next up. Nick P. writes, at the Evan Peters reveal, the audio description, yep, we've been through that already. Again, it means nothing. That was just a descriptor of what we were seeing visually with our eyes. It wasn't confirming anything. It doesn't disprove anything either. Like, it doesn't go the other way. It doesn't disprove anything, but it doesn't prove anything. It's literally just a closed caption description of what we were seeing. All right, next up. David Findlay writes, isn't it strange? Agnes is present at all the children's rapid age spurts. Not really. There were only 2. It's not like there have been 7. Wanda was also present at all their age spurts. They almost age again after she kills the dog. Maybe she is preparing them or prepping them. Also, maybe Norm says also, maybe the she Norm is talking about is Dottie. Possible, but then again, any female in there could possibly be the she. Of course, Norm says, stop her, you gotta stop her, she's doing this, you gotta stop her. It's like, what if the he didn't say Wanda. So there could be something to that, but then it could be any she that we've seen. It could be Agnes, could be Dottie, could be any one of the other women, maybe like the others that Dottie was reaming out or whatever. It could be anybody. So yeah, it could be Dottie, could be anybody, something like that. But no, I don't think there's anything to the fact that Agnes was there. There was nothing there to suggest that Agnes was controlling anything. Like I said, Wanda was there too. That doesn't mean Wanda was doing it. And it really does seem like the kids were doing it themselves, right? The 2 kids looked at each other, boom. And then they looked at each other again, like they were going to fast forward through their pain and grief of losing their dog. But it was them doing it, right? So I don't think it was Agnes. I don't think it was Wanda. I think it was themselves. And again, if they had like 4 growth spurts, and for each one of those 4 growth spurts, Agnes happened to be at every single one, then there's maybe something to consider. But the fact that it only happened twice, I think that could still just be written off to just pure coincidence. But hey, if it happens again and Agnes is there when they growth spurt again, there might be something to revisit here, David. There just very well could be. All right, Daniel writes, long shot here. While the Hex fits the magical theory, Mephisto, etc., could Ultron be making a return? The hexagon pattern was shown in energy fields in Age of Ultron, and a lot of the merchandise has hexagonal patterns thoughts. Well, here's the thing. I don't think Ultron's involved in the way you're thinking, but there have been some theories that Sword was researching on Vision's remains, specifically because they wanted to get more into robotics and AI. And I think other people have come up with this, but I think there's some credence to it that they might be trying to revive Ultron or recreate Ultron. Because they might be thinking, if we could properly control it, that Ultron was really powerful, almost beat the Avengers. Wouldn't it be great if we had Ultron, but like we were in control? So I am not completely against the idea that Ultron could be in play here, but I don't think kind of the way you're describing, I don't think because of the hexagon patterns, I don't think that has anything to do with it personally, but I won't be, look, I'm not saying Ultron is involved. What I'm saying though is, if it turns out that we see Ultron again at the end of this thing, I'm not going to be shocked. I don't think we will, but I won't be shocked if we do. So I do think there's something to that part of it, Daniel, for sure. All right, next up, Tony Rodriguez writes, I think this Pietro from Fox knows Magneto is his Fox father and reveals she was adopted and Magneto is their real father because he sent them to Sokovia to keep them safe, and the Loki's staff brought out their powers and Baron Zemo thought the gave them it. Try that last part again. The Loki's staff brought out their powers and Baron Zemo thought the gave them it. I'm not quite sure what you're saying there, Tony. Other than, no. This Wanda Maximoff, her father is not Eric. Her father's not Magneto in the MCU. They were very clear on who her parents are and who they were. She wasn't secretly given up for adoption. And by the way, I think her parents are in WandaVision. I think that the man and woman we see in every single commercial, I think those are her parents. I don't know that for sure. That is clearly just a wild random guess of mine, but I think those are her parents. So no, I don't think they're going to retcon things and say, oh yeah, Wanda's thing is Magneto. There is no Magneto in this universe right now. There is no mutants in this universe right now. So I don't think that's the case. But again, anything can happen. Like at some point I thought Wanda was totally in control of this thing and she's not, because as new episodes come along, it changed our theory. So ask me that again after episode 6, because maybe I'll be singing a different tune. For now, I don't think that's the case, but let's keep our eye on it, Tony. All right. A friend 72 writes, I think the real bad guy is going to be Baron Mordo from the end of Doctor Strange, or the baddie going to be Nightmare. Yeah, a few people, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, a few people think it might be Nightmare. I don't think so for now. I don't think so. Mordo is a fascinating possibility because we know this story is going to connect with Spider-Man 3 and Doctor Strange 2. Who's the bad guy for Doctor Strange right now? Well, as of the end of the first Doctor Strange movie, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Baron Mordo, is new villain. Too many, what does he say? Sorcerers? Too many sorcerers. He's going to wipe them out. But Wanda is not a sorcerer in the traditional sense, so I'm not quite sure why Mordo would be targeting her, or what his endgame is in trying to get to her. I haven't seen any Mordo connections here yet. But again, there's rationality to it because, again, we know this story does connect with Doctor Strange 2. Mordo is connected with Doctor Strange. So there's a logical two dots there that could connect. I don't see it yet, but it's rational. So let's see where that goes. All right. Dean VC Ralph writes, I feel it's Quicksilver, but it's blah blah, who is the god of chaos magic, also needed a vessel to be on Earth, and because he try this again, and because he Quicksilver is because the MCU Quicksilver, guys, please make sure you're reading out what you write before you hit send. And because the MCU Quicksilver is dead, he took Fox's one. Also, the comic book, he took over Quicksilver, and he want to transfer into Wanda. Again, it's kind of irrelevant what happens in that. Also, don't forget, if you want to go really into the comics, then, you know, the recreated Vision, the kids, none of it are real. And like, so like, don't worry about what happened in the comics. Don't worry about what happened. It doesn't necessarily have any impact here. I think that's going way out in left field. I don't see them bringing that in here. Like, that's way out there. That's way out there. And that is something that's going to fly over the heads of any common average people watching. Because listen, what they're trying to do with WandaVision right now is what they did with Mandalorian. The real magic of Mandalorian wasn't that they got Star Wars fans to watch it. The magic of Mandalorian was they got everybody watching it. We all know tons of people who are not all that big into Star Wars. But once Baby Yoda showed up and people started talking Mandalorian, there's a lot of people who started watching Mandalorian who aren't even what you would call hardcore Star Wars fans or anything like that, right? And I think that is something that Kevin Feige also wants to do with the MCU on Netflix. Make great, sharp, compelling programming, but don't go so far off the deep end that it alienates average watchers, right? Because if you watch, you know, what Jon Favreau did with Mandalorian, he always told compelling, great, fun stories, but never went like so far, like, let's talk gray Jedi and let's do, like, he never went so far that it alienated the more casual fan who are now just getting into Mandalorian. And I think Kevin Feige is going to go to the same thing. And because of that, I don't think Feige is going to go do too many things that are too far out there, So that sounds like it's a theory that might be a little bit too far out. But here's the thing, Dean. In a world where Jamie Foxx is playing Electro again, anything is possible. And if they turn out to do this, I'm going to remember that you wrote that, and you get to have that one. You'll get to totally own that one. So let's see what they do. All right, next up, we've got possibility probability rights. How has no one thought of a staple of the sitcom genres? I've come to see my grandbabies. LMAO would lose my shit if I got to see a cameo of Tony and Banner as two gay, not old or not dads. Wanda could fill in stand-ins. For hers. Old Uncle Rogers, yes. I am totally don't understand what you're talking about. Okay, I've come to see my grandbabies. I'd lose my shit if we saw Tony and Banner as two gay or not dads. Like dad of Vision and Wanda, like their grandfathers. Wanda could fill in stand-ins for hers. I'm not quite sure what that means. And old Uncle Rogers, yes. I don't know if that's is grandparents coming to see their grandchildren, the old sitcom thing. I'm not sure about that. But listen, I said before, when Elizabeth Olsen revealed that there's going to be this big, huge cameo coming, one of the people I said on my list of 5 or 6 that could be a possibility is Tony Stark. Because you know me, Robert Downey Jr. is not going to stay away from the MCU. Not forever, maybe not even for long. I don't know if it's going to be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. Eventually he's coming back. Could be sooner rather than we think. And he is kind of, in some ways, him and Banner are in some ways Vision's father in some ways. I guess so is Ultron to a degree, but they're kind of his dad in a way. So, I mean, maybe having like them pop up, that would be, having Tony pop up in this show would be a mega level event. And maybe it could be as like, it's dad, it's Vision's dad. Maybe that could happen. Why not? All right, next up, Frederico Black writes, "Hey, John, I think Smokin' Aces is a very underrated film. I like Smokin' Aces, especially the ending, which I think makes the movie. The score from Clint Mansell and Ryan Reynolds acting with saying only one word. What is your favorite ending from an underrated film? Well, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. But one of the great things, what's the name of the guy again from Entourage? Hold a second. I keep forgetting the name of the guy from Entourage, who is also one of the stars of Smokin' Aces. Who was that again? It was Jeremy Piven. That's right. Jeremy Piven. Ray Liotta was really getting it. Peter Berg. I like Smokin' Aces. It's one of those kind of frantic. It's a Joe Carnahan film, and one of his better ones. But it was done very much in a Guy Ritchie kind of style. And I'm a big fan of Guy Ritchie's, particularly when he's doing his Guy Ritchie style, where they're talking about Lock, Stock, or Snatch. Snatch is one of my top 20 favorite films of all time. His recent The Gentleman, I thought was fantastic. It was my second favorite movie of 2020, The Gentleman. I love that style. And Joe Carnahan really kind of brought that as well to Smokin' Aces. So it's like not one of my all-time favorite movies or anything like that, but it's a good one. If you've not seen Smokin' Aces, I do suggest going and giving it a shot. And like Ryan Reynolds is great in it. This is before he was like the super big movie star that he is today. But it's really good if you get a chance to check it out. I follow Frederico's advice and do check out Smokin' Aces. All right, next up. King Andre writes, my theory is that the engineer that Monica is referring to that will build the machine that gets him inside the hex is Scott Lang. No, I don't think so. I think if anything, it's more likely Hank Pym. Like Hank Pym is far smarter when it comes to that stuff than Scott Lang is. Scott Lang's smart. He's not Hank Pym smart. Now, I'm not saying it's Hank Pym either. Like, I don't think it's Reed Richards. I'm not necessarily saying it's Hank Pym, but Hank Pym would make sense. It would make sense. And I think he'd be more likely than a Scott Lang. And hey, anything that gives us an excuse to have Paul Rudd show up for something, I'm all for. I love both of those guys, so whichever. All right, Jose Ricardo writes, in Spanish translation of WandaVision episode 5, Monica Rambeau mentions the aerospace engineer to be female due to Spanish gendered language. Might they introduce Ironheart Riri Williams? Well, first of all, that's really interesting. I had no, and maybe we're not even supposed to have any concept of that. I had no concept of that really. In the Spanish translation, it's a feminine gendered kind of language. I had no idea of that. That really kind of makes it really interesting because that takes out all the main big cameo names, right? And by the way, the person Monica's referring to, an aerospace engineer, it could be totally a character we've never met before. It could totally be a brand new character, right? But in the world of everybody mentioned has to be a big famous Marvel name that we all fall into, you know, if it is female, it throws out a lot of the big names initially. It ain't Reed Richards. It ain't Hank Pym. Some people thought maybe it could be Dr. Hank McCoy, which, I mean, obviously that's another X-Men thing, so I don't think they were doing that anyway, but it throws a lot of those out. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Riri Williams is too young to like be one of the world's foremost aerospace engineers. Isn't Riri supposed to be younger? At any rate, so I'm going to guess no, but I think that's fast. If that's true, Jose, what you're saying, that in the Spanish language, it's a feminine verbiage that's being used. That's very fascinating. We'll have to keep our eyes open and see it. Thank you for sharing that, man. Really appreciate that. All right, next up, we've got Dark Knight Rises, who writes, hey, John, R.I.P. to Christopher Plummer, good Canadian kid, man. Such a tragedy. One of the greatest actors to ever live. Seeing him in All the Money in the World, I couldn't imagine why he'd be second choice. Such a towering talent in so many movies and TV. There was a certain niche he was able to fill. Now leaves Hollywood void. Yeah, I mean, Christopher Plummer. I mean, obviously a lot of Hollywood, when they think of Christopher Plummer, the good Canadian kid, they will obviously think of Sound of Music. Let me just bring up, let's bring this up. They will obviously think of Sound of Music, and that's understandable. That's great. Obviously, Sound of Music, a little bit before my time, A little bit before my time was that one. But it's understandable that they would think Sound of Music. That's completely forgivable and understandable that your mind would go to Sound of Music. But I mean, for me, you know, Rob and I were talking about this the other day. We were talking about this. For me, I can't help but think of, you know, Star Trek, where he plays a Klingon general, where he's so great. But I think a lot of his smaller roles as well, like even in things like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo that I love so much and I really enjoyed him in. I think about the recent film of his, you know, the most recent one that I watched that I really loved him in, of course, was Knives Out, the Rian Johnson film with everybody else in Hollywood that was in it. He was so good in Knives Out. And, you know, I told this story before, and I think on tomorrow's John Campea Show, I'll wear that Dragon Tattoo jacket again. I recently came across, as we moved, you know, when you move, you always lose some things, but you always find some things that you thought you lost ages ago. As Ann and I were moving, and we moved 1 week and 1 day ago, we moved into the new place here. I came across my Girl with the Dragon Tattoo jacket. And so I wore it on one of the videos. And I got that jacket while standing with Christopher Plummer. I'd flown out to New York to participate in the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo junket. And I met with Daniel Craig first. And then I went in to meet the great Christopher Plummer. And in the prep room, he was in there as well. And we were standing talking about Montreal and things like that. And that's when the PR person came out. There were a few of the press people there who hadn't gotten their gift bags yet. And in this gift bag was this really great Girl with the Dragon Tattoo jacket. So I got it while I was there with Christopher Plummer. And so when Christopher Plummer died the other day, I wore that jacket on my next video. I'll probably wear it again tomorrow. But yeah, truly one of the greats. As Robert Meyer Burnett will often say, a life well lived. And his presence will be his missing presence will definitely be felt in Hollywood moving forward. Anyway, thanks for sharing that, Dark Knight Rises. Next up, Dark Knight Rises also writes, I'm so late to the party in terms of discovering Don Johnson. I saw him in Sidney Lumet's Guilty as Sin. I think he's got considerable talent. I may have to look back at old Miami Vice reruns. What's your take on his range? Chances he'll work with Dakota? I mean, it's not up to him. It's really up to if some director wants to put him and Dakota in the same thing together. And I just don't know if I don't know if that'll happen or not. He's got a new sitcom though. I just saw it with one of the SNL stars and I cannot remember who it is. I'm going to look it up here. He's got a new sitcom. Hold on a second. Don. It's unimaginable to think that Don Johnson would be the second build so-and-so actor in a new sitcom. You'd think you'd be doing the sitcom and you'd say starring Don Johnson. But they didn't do it. Okay, it's Kenan. That's right. The show is Kenan with Kenan Thompson from Saturday Night Live. So it's called Kenan, and they just say starring Kenan Thompson from Saturday Night Live. And then you notice that Don Johnson is in it as well. You would think, I mean, it's hard to imagine there being a show with Don Johnson. Like if you go back a few years ago, to think it would be impossible to think of a show with Don Johnson where he's not like one of the headline names, like right up there on the poster. But there he is. I like Don Johnson. I like him. I don't know what I think about his real ultimate range. I mean, he's had a good career even after Miami Vice. Obviously, Miami Vice, like whenever Don Johnson decides to retire from acting, the main thing we'll all think about is Miami Vice. I mean, sure, that was a huge cultural phenomenon, that show. Still one of the greatest pieces of opening music ever, but I like him in everything I see him in. I don't know that I've ever seen him be given the opportunity to show a lot of range. I'm not saying he doesn't have the ability to have a lot of range. I'm just saying I can't think of a lot of opportunities he's been given to display a lot of range. But I like Don. I like seeing him on screen. I think he's cool. And so probably the thing about this Kenan show that I'm most interested in checking out, even though Kenan's very good on Saturday Night Live, is the Don Johnson part. That's the part I'm looking forward to the most. All right. Next up, Koa1708 writes, Are all these Marvel shows as one-time things, or will there be a WandaVision season 2 and so on? If it's just a one-time thing, then Marvel will need to keep pumping out shows for Disney Plus. Oh, listen, I think there will be both. I think WandaVision is definitely a one-shot thing, because I don't think, wild speculation, not based on anything, I don't think Wanda Maximoff makes it out of Doctor Strange 2. Again, could be completely wrong about that. I'm not willing to even bet $1 on that. I just got a feeling she's not making out of that. So I think this is a one-time event. I think there will be MCU shows that are one-time events, and there will be MCU shows that maybe get a second or third season. But listen, when saying you got to keep up with coming up with Marvel content to pump out these shows, Marvel has nothing but huge untapped potential with hundreds of characters that they could do. Not to mention, they're about to inherit the entire X-Men universe as well, right? They're about to bring the X-Men into their universe, which introduces us to another 100 characters. So the problem facing Feige and co moving forward is not going to be, how are we going to come up with characters to do all these shows? The question is, how are we going to come up with enough shows? How are we going to have enough time and production bandwidth to do all the shows and movies that we want to do with all these characters that are just sitting around waiting to have new content made for them, right? With a lot of people, the problem is reversed. Man, they want 15 shows out of us over the next 3 years. How are we going to come up with all those shows? That's not their problem. Their problem is, my God, we only have enough time to do 15 shows in the next 3 years when we've got 70 potential movies and shows with all these characters sitting around waiting to go. So it's kind of a reverse problem than what you traditionally have. All right. Next up, Darth Desimorris writes, Robo Necro explained, in Wakanda, Vibranium infused everything, clothes, plants, hence the heart-shaped herb, compatible with organic matter, equals vision. Just Beast is good for the crossover since he was an X-Man turned Avengers. Do you just mean Vision? I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. Anyway. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what you're talking about. Just Beast? I don't know what Just Beast is. Is good for the crossover since he was an X-Man turned Avenger. I know Beast was an Avenger. Are we talking about Beast? Was Beast, I'll be honest, I am not quite sure what we're talking about. For everybody else who does know what Darth's talking about, jump down into the comments section and give some commentary there. Maybe I'll kick myself later for not remembering what it is we're discussing, but honestly, that's gone right over my head. Sorry about that, Darth. All right, next up, an anonymous viewer writes, another engineer they could use could be Forge. I doubt it. There's never been, Forge is a very unknown. I used to love Forge, by the way, but Forge is a rarely used, rarely talked about thing that his name wouldn't get, I don't know. Anyway, he was working with the government around the 80s, made a gun to strip Rogue of her powers, missed and took Storms instead. Comedy. Deadpool's Cable appears, Josh Brolin. Wanda sees, screams, and screams Thanos. Okay, I hadn't thought about that. That's pretty clever. That's clever. I like that. I mean, Forge was a character that was popping around in the X-Men comics right around the time. I don't know how much he was been used in the last decade or so, to be honest, but I know right around the time of the Age of Apocalypse storyline, like a little bit before and a little bit after, I know Forge was used quite a bit. I don't know that he qualifies as an aerospace engineer. Plus, I don't think Forge is a name you tease. You tease a name. I could see Forge just showing up, but you don't tease Forge because not enough people know who Forge is, right? So I don't know that you don't set that up with a tease. So while I like the deep cut on Forge, I don't see it. I think it just doesn't make enough sense to me, but it would be kind of a kick if he did show up, and I appreciate the deep cut, Anonymous. I like that. All right, next up. Jared W. writes, unlikely theory on the cameo for WandaVision. We've all been assuming the cameo is for a character, Professor X, for example. What if it's actually, pardon me, the actor that's important, and we get an appearance from Mary-Kate and Ashley. Wouldn't be very nostalgic a la Luke in Mandalorian. Here's the problem. If they were going to do that, that would have happened in episode 5. Episode 5 is where this would have happened. Because, I mean, that's where... Let me just look this up here. Hold a second. Let me look up Full House. Yeah, I mean, it was really more of an 80s show. It did stretch into the 90s. Full House stretched into the 90s. It stretched all the way to 95, but it's really kind of seen more as an 80s show. So maybe next episode, as they get to the 90s, maybe that's possible. But I mean, I think that was shot down a long time ago. I remember I thought too, man, it would be a missed opportunity not to have Mary-Kate and Ashley show up in their sister show. But apparently that was shot down. Apparently it was definitively stated that Mary-Kate and Ashley will not be participating in this. So it's probably unlikely, but that, I mean, that would have been fun. But would that have been a Luke Skywalker showing up in Mandalorian, sending an earthquake-like tremor through all of pop culture? I don't think so. I think it would have been very cool and very cute to have Mary-Kate and Ashley, Elizabeth's sisters, show up in this thing for a quick cameo. I think that would have been really charming and kind of fun. But a Luke Skywalker seismic tectonic shift in the pop culture where you could feel the tremor in the force around the entire world when Luke shows up at the end of Mandalorian, Mary-Kate and Ashley showing up, I don't see that being there. But I do feel, Jared, like that was a missed opportunity. I feel like it would have been really, really good to have them in there. All right, and let's take one more here before we wrap it up. And this one will come to us from Hayden Burke, who writes, with the addition of the X-Men and Fantastic Four, do you think the MCU will lead to another Endgame level event in years to come? Uniting the upcoming additions to the cast with all those who exist now, can you imagine the cost? What would be the threat? Well, I mean, look, one of the things that is definitely for sure is they will try, they've already laid out their basic pattern, their game plan, right? Create one major overarching story that many films can play a small part towards, eventually build up to it, and then you get an Endgame-like event with Endgame type of windfalls, right? Like, again, it's so impressive. I'm not the biggest fan in the world. I mean, I like Avatar very much. I like it very much. But I'm not like a huge Avatar fan or anything like that. I just thought Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar, was a really good movie. Really good movie. Just like I think a lot of other movies are really good, but like not a best picture of the year or anything like that. But man, when you think about it, that movie was the #1 film at the box office for almost a decade. So you had a decade of inflation, and it took a movie like Endgame that needed 10 years of buildup, 20 plus movies of buildup, with about 20 plus A-list Hollywood stars. It took all of that. 10 plus years, 20 plus movies, 20 plus big Hollywood stars, all building up to one thing. And it took that to finally dethrone a single standalone movie like Avatar to come out, right? And it took something, we needed a decade plus of building, 20 plus films of building, and 20 plus A-list Hollywood stars. And that is what it finally took to beat Avatar. But look at the rewards they got, right? Not just rewards in financially. That film nearly made $3 billion. Became the #1 box office film of all time. And beyond that, it's not the greatest Marvel movie. Look, Endgame, honestly, isn't even in my top 3 favorite MCU movies. It's great. I love it. I love Endgame, but it's not even in my top 3 favorite MCU movies. But the pure experience of it, because of that 10 plus years, because of those 20 plus movies, because of all that, and it just climaxed in this one huge event. It was excellent. Do you think the MCU wants to replicate that? Absolutely they do. Absolutely they do. Now, that's not to say that the next big major overarching thing that they're building up to for 2029 or 2031 necessarily laid the groundwork in WandaVision or will necessarily even lay the groundwork in Falcon and Winter Soldier. But they've shown what their formula is not a dirty word. Everybody treats the word formula like it's a dirty word. It doesn't mean their formula needs to start right away, but their formula is clear. Introduce a lot of characters, make great movies. That's the other thing. Endgame never would have happened. None of it would mean crap if all the MCU movies had sucked. Now, they had a couple of hiccups, Iron Man 2, Thor 2. So they had some hiccups, but for the most part, 20 plus films, they're films that the audiences loved, the critics loved. They all enjoyed great success, build up. So if they can continue to do that with, old, faithful characters that the audience already loves, with brand new mixture of characters like She-Hulk, like Moon Knight, like Miss Marvel, and all these things, and mix in a bunch of new ones at all, and then start that process again. Now, who or what is the next big bad? I mean, I don't know. It can be anybody. It can be anybody. I mean, the obvious ones that come to mind, Galactus comes to mind. Now that Galactus will be part of the MCU playground, Galactus could be it. Maybe Kang, but I doubt Kang. Kang is going to be like the big bad guy of Ant-Man 3. I don't think they're going to follow where there'll be whispers of who the big bad is. And then they'll be introduced a little bit by a little bit to the big bad. And then they'll really start to climax that. So I don't think it's going to be Kang, but Galactus, Doctor Doom, maybe Doctor Doom. Although I think they're going to want to get to Doom a little sooner than that. But I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. We'll see which way they decide to go. All right, guys, listen, still many more to come, and we're going to get caught up even more over the next day or so. We got Wakandan Forever, Jikanos, GQ, Regan Crisp, and many more. We're going to get picked up on this again on tomorrow's John Campea Show. So we're going to start off the live questions part of the show on the John Campea Show tomorrow with Wakandan Forever. We're going to move on from there, and then we will do another companion video tomorrow and get everything all cleared up. We'll be all cut up by the end of tomorrow on all the questions you guys have sent in. And by the way, guys, if you want, you can actually send in questions before the show starts. It increases your chances of getting it seen sooner. Simply go to the tip link that's in the description in the video below. That's streamlabs.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be getting your comment or question on the show if it's reasonable. And of course, you'll be supporting the channel at the same time. Guys, special thank you to all of you who have sent in all these questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel as you did it. And all of us involved here at the John Campea YouTube show, thank you guys very, very much for that. Guys, remember to do the four main things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves. Please take care of the people around you. That'll do it for me, guys. My name's John Campea, and until tomorrow's John Campea Show, bye-bye.